The courtroom in Benton County, Ohio, wasn't used to this much attention. Normally, it handled minor disputes and the occasional criminal case, but today was different. Reporters sat in the back. Cameras were prohibited, but that didn't stop. The whispers and shifting eyes. Everyone had heard about the strange witness 9-year-old Emma Reynolds, the little girl who hadn't spoken in over a year. She sat quietly at the front, feet barely touching the floor, her hands clutched around the leash of a large German shepherd named Max. The dog sat calmly beside her, tongue lolling out, eyes sharp. He wasn't just there for comfort, he was her service dog, trained to understand her in ways even adults couldn't. The judge, a firm but fair man named Harold Halverson, adjusted his glasses and glanced at the girl over his bench. She looked fragile, too small for the situation she was in. Her father had died tragically in what was first ruled an accident, but new evidence brought forward by her suggested foul play. The courtroom was tense, uncertain how a silent child and her dog could offer anything useful in a murder trial. The prosecutor, Ms. Lange, stood and looked toward Emma. "We're ready to begin, Your Honor," she said. Judge Halverson nodded. "Bring the witness forward." Emma's mother, seated behind her, gave her daughter a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder. Emma took a deep breath and stood. Max rose with her, alert. She hesitated for just a moment before walking toward the witness stand. She had done this. Walked before, during mock preparations, but this was real. Real people, real pressure, real fear. Then it happened, so small, so subtle, that most of the courtroom missed it. Emma flicked her fingers near her waist. A soft circular motion. Max saw it. The dog responded instantly. He stepped forward with her, but then, unprompted, placed his right paw on the edge of the witness table. Gasps spread through the courtroom. Judge Halverson sat up straighter, eyebrows raised. A murmur rippled across the benches. Is he responding to her? The judge asked, puzzled. Emma didn't respond, but her mother rose to her feet. "Yes, Your Honor," she said, voice trembling with both nerves and pride. Emma trained Max to respond to silent hand signs. It's how she communicates. Judge Halverson stared at the pair for a moment longer. "And she's prepared to testify this way?" The prosecutor stepped in. "Yes, Your Honor. We've cleared it with the state. The dog acts as a bridge to her memory. What she can't say, he demonstrates. It's unconventional, but it works." The defense scoffed. "Your Honor, this is a courtroom, not a stage. Are we to interpret a child's pantomime through her dog as admissible evidence?" The judge raised a hand. "We will observe. If I find it unfit or prejudicial, I will intervene. But I will not deny this child her voice however she delivers." Emma, still silent, gave Max another quick sign. The dog sat, alert and ready. Everyone watched. The moment didn't feel theatrical. It felt real, raw, a child, traumatized, using the only method she had left to speak the truth. And it was working. The bailiff swore Emma in. She didn't repeat the words aloud, but she nodded, eyes firm. Max didn't make a sound. He didn't need to. He was watching her hands, waiting for the next cue. And so began the most extraordinary testimony Benton County had ever seen, one not told with words, but with gestures, loyalty, and a bond so deep, even a courtroom had to listen. The judge leaned back in his chair, studying the girl and the dog beside her. He had seen hundreds of witnesses over the years, but none like this. He didn't know exactly what was coming, but somehow he knew this little girl and her dog were about to change everything. The courtroom was thick with anticipation as Emma settled onto the witness stand, Max at her side, alert and steady. The judge, the attorneys, and even the jurors leaned in, curious and cautious about what was to come. Emma's mother, sitting quietly in the gallery, gave her daughter a nod of encouragement. The little girl's hands twitched nervously in her lap. Then, with careful precision, Emma lifted her right hand and made a small flicking motion with her fingers, almost like tracing an invisible circle in the air. It was a subtle sign, but Max understood perfectly. Max stood immediately and walked up to the front of the witness table. He placed his paw gently on the edge of the wood, looking back at Emma, as if asking for confirmation. Emma nodded slightly. The judge's eyebrows lifted in disbelief. Was this really happening? The prosecutor, Ms. Lange, smiled faintly and whispered to the court reporter, "We're about to see something extraordinary." Emma's mother stood and addressed the court. Briefly, Emma has been diagnosed with selective mutism. She cannot speak in stressful environments, but she has trained Max to understand over 40 unique hand signals, her own language. Through Max, she can communicate what she has witnessed. The judge adjusted his glasses. Very well. Proceed. Emma's fingers moved again. This time, she pointed downward, then mimed pushing something heavy with both hands. Max responded by sitting and then standing on his hind legs, pressing his front paws downward, mimicking a pushing motion. The courtroom watched silently, captivated. The judge whispered to his clerk, "What's she saying?" Emma's defense attorney, Mr. Collins, looked at the prosecutor expectantly. Ms. Lange stepped forward to interpret. "She's indicating the car lift, the one involved in the accident. She's showing that it was manipulated," Ms. Lange explained. A hush fell over the room. Could a child's silent demonstration through a dog reveal what no one else could say? Emma's hand twitched again, this time making a motion like turning a knob. Max barked softly once, then circled the witness table. It was as if the dog was acting out Emma's memory in real time. The judge leaned forward. "Miss Reynolds, do you see anyone operating the controls on that day?" Emma nodded slightly, then made a small sweeping motion toward a group of people in the courtroom, specifically the defendant, a man named Dave Marks, a former employee of her father. Gasps erupted in the courtroom. Dave shifted uncomfortably. Defense attorney objected, "Your Honor, this is highly prejudicial and speculative." But Judge Halverson held up a hand. Overruled. The testimony will continue. Emma's hands moved faster now, signaling a sequence of events. A tug, a sudden fall, a sharp whimper. Max responded by laying flat, whining softly, then jumping up again. It was a heartbreaking reenactment of the accident's moment. Many in the courtroom felt chills. Emma wasn't just showing movements. She was telling a story, one that no one had dared to tell out loud. The judge's gaze softened as he looked at Emma. "You're very brave, young lady," he said quietly. Emma gave no response, but Max nudged her hand gently, as if offering comfort. The room was silent, save for the soft panting of the dog. Outside the courtroom, reporters jotted notes furiously. This was more than a case now. It was a testament to human resilience and the full, extraordinary bond between a child and her dog. Emma's mother whispered to a close friend. Max has been her voice when she had none. The prosecutor summed it up for the court. What we see here is a language of trust. Through Max, Emma is telling us exactly what happened that day. The judge nodded. The court will consider this testimony carefully. For now, Miss Reynolds. Thank you. Emma climbed down from the stand, Max faithfully at her side. The courtroom buzzed quietly. No one could deny it. This was a new kind of testimony, one born of silence but bursting with truth. As the courtroom settled into an uneasy quiet, the judge called for a brief recess. Reporters whispered among themselves, and the jurors exchanged looks of both curiosity and disbelief. How could a young girl's silent testimony through her dog possibly hold the weight of evidence in such a serious trial? But for Emma Reynolds, This method was the only way she could share what she had lived through. 3 years earlier, Emma's life had been drastically different. The Reynolds family lived in a small town in Ohio, where her father, Mark Reynolds, was a beloved local mechanic who owned a modest auto shop. Emma's days were filled with laughter, school, and playing in the backyard with Max, a lively German shepherd her parents had adopted from a shelter. Everything changed the day of the accident. Emma had been playing nearby when she heard a sudden, terrifying crash. She ran toward the garage and saw her father pinned under the heavy car lift, the metal frame twisted unnaturally. A sharp smell of gasoline and burning oil filled the air. Emma froze, unable to speak, unable to call for help. She could only watch as neighbors rushed over, frantically trying to lift the car. Her father never fully recovered from the injuries, and 3 months later, he passed away. The official investigation labeled it a tragic accident and unfortunate malfunction of the lift's hydraulic system. But Emma had noticed something else that day. A shadowy figure, someone she recognized, had been near the controls just moments before the lift collapsed. Emma tried to speak about it, but found her voice locked away. The trauma silenced her. She stopped talking altogether. That was when Max came into her life. Her mother explained to the court how Emma had poured her heart into training Max. Each hand signal was a way for Emma to tell her story without words. A silent language of gestures and cues that Max understood intuitively. It was a way for her to regain control when words failed. Back in the courtroom, Emma made a small sweeping motion with her hand. Max immediately responded by pacing slowly in a circle, and then stopped at a particular spot near the evidence table. The prosecutor stepped forward and said, "Emma is indicating the garage floor where the lift collapsed." Emma's hand moved again, this time making a quick tugging gesture. Max lowered his head and whimpered softly. The judge watched closely, sensing the gravity behind the movements. Emma's next gesture was a subtle pointing motion, followed by a small flick. Max stood and mimicked turning an invisible lever. The prosecutor interpreted for the court. "She is indicating the control panel." Emma remembers someone tampering with the controls before the accident. A murmur spread among the audience. The room seemed to grow colder. Emma's hands moved again, describing a quick sequence. A shadow passing, a loud metallic sound, then the sudden crash. Max lay down and barked softly twice. The judge's face showed surprise and concern. "Is this the first time you have shared these details, Miss Reynolds?" Emma's mother nodded. "She has held it inside for years, Your Honor. This is the first time she has been able to express what she saw." The courtroom was silent, the weight of Emma's silent testimony sinking in. Emma's attorney added, "Her bond with Max has given her the courage and means to reveal the truth." Judge Halverson nodded solemnly. "We will take this testimony seriously." Outside, the news spread quickly. A child who couldn't speak had found a way to tell a story of tragedy, suspicion, and possible foul play. The day that had broken. Emma's family might finally get the justice it deserved. And it was all unfolding through the silent language of a girl and her dog. Asterisk. The courtroom buzzed quietly as Emma's silent testimony continued to unravel a truth no one had dared to speak aloud before. The atmosphere was tense, thick with anticipation, as the prosecution carefully guided Emma through the hand signals she used to communicate through. Max. Emma lifted her hand slowly and made a subtle pointing motion toward the defense table, where Dave Marks, the defendant and her father's former employee, sat. The man's face hardened as the eyes of everyone in the courtroom turned toward him. Max, ever alert, lifted his nose and sniffed toward the same direction, and growled softly. The defense attorney immediately objected. "Your Honor, this is speculative and unfairly prejudicial." Judge Halverson raised a hand to silence the objection. "The objection is noted, but overruled. We will allow the testimony to proceed. Emma's mother watched anxiously from the gallery, clutching her hands. Her daughter had held this secret inside for so long, but now, through Max, it was coming out piece by piece. Emma's fingers moved again, describing a series of actions. She traced an invisible line on the floor, then mimed pulling a lever, then made a sudden stop. Max jumped to his feet and barked twice. The prosecutor stepped forward to explain. Emma is showing us the sequence of events she witnessed. She remembers seeing someone near the lift controls just before the accident, someone she recognized. She is indicating that person was Dave Marks. A few gasps echoed throughout the room. Dave's lawyer looked around nervously, realizing that the child's silent testimony was gaining weight. The judge called for a short recess to review the evidence. When the court reconvened, the prosecution presented a surprising new piece of evidence, a security camera video from the garage's rear entrance. The footage was grainy, but clear enough to reveal a figure approaching the lift controls moments before the accident. The figure's build and clothing matched Dave Marks. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she watched the screen, then made a slow, deliberate motion, mimicking tightening a bolt. "Is this an indication of tampering?" the prosecutor asked. Emma nodded. Max barked once in confirmation. The defense attorney protested loudly, but the judge called for order. "We will examine this further," Judge Halverson said firmly. The prosecution called a forensic expert who testified that the lift's hydraulic system had been deliberately sabotaged. The evidence showed that a bolt securing the safety mechanism had been loosened. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. Emma made another small gesture, this time pointing to the defendant's chest and then to the floor. Max growled louder. It was a silent accusation that Dave Marks had caused the accident intentionally. The defense attorney tried to dismiss the claims as circumstantial, but the momentum had shifted. Emma's testimony through Max had breathed life into a case that once seemed hopeless. As the trial continued, the judge frequently glanced at Emma and Max. The unusual method of testimony had shaken the courtroom's conventions, but it also brought clarity. The little girl who couldn't speak had become the voice of truth through her dog's actions. Outside, news of the courtroom drama spread rapidly. People marveled at the bond between Emma and Max and the way their silent language had exposed a hidden crime. The trial was no longer just about an accident. It was about justice, betrayal, and the courage to speak without words. For Emma and her family, it was the beginning of hope. The courtroom was electric as the trial resumed after the recess. The defense attorney, Robert Mason, stood with a determined glare. He was ready to challenge the unprecedented testimony, the silent language between Emma and her dog. "Max, Your Honor," Mason began. "This so-called testimony is nothing more than a dog's random behavior interpreted through guesswork. This court cannot allow such theatrics to decide a man's fate." Judge Halverson nodded, but remained firm. "Proceed, Mr. Mason. But stay relevant." Mason approached Emma cautiously. "Miss Reynolds, do you understand what is happening here today?" Emma's hands twitched nervously, but did not make any sign. Mason smirked and said louder, "You cannot speak. So instead, you use your dog to speak for you. Is that correct?" Emma gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Is it possible," Mason continued, "that Max's actions are influenced by those coaching you? That someone else is interpreting these signs to mislead the court?" The judge raised an eyebrow. Emma's mother shook her head quickly. "No, Your Honor. Emma has trained Max herself, without outside help." Mason wasn't satisfied. "Very well. Max, show us again what you did earlier." Emma made a hand signal, and Max responded instantly. The dog pawed the witness stand, then barked 3 times once for each event Emma had described earlier. Courtroom was silent, but for the soft barks, Mason raised his hands dramatically. Ladies and gentlemen, a dog can be trained to perform tricks. This does not equate to testimony. But then, something happened that stunned everyone. The prosecutor, Ms. Lange, called for the security video to be played again. This time, she pointed out a sequence of movements slow and deliberate that the figure in the video made near the lift controls. Emma's hands made matching motions. She mimicked the turning of a knob, then tugged at the air as if pulling a lever. Max barked sharply and circled the defense table and sat, staring intently at Dave Marks. The judge's jaw tightened. Mason's confident smirk faltered. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said. "Emma's gestures, reinforced by Max's actions, are consistent and specific. They match the forensic evidence we presented earlier." The judge called for a moment of silence. Then, the bailiff handed Judge Halverson a new piece of evidence, a report from the lab indicating that the hydraulic lift's safety bolt had been tampered with, showing signs of deliberate loosening. The judge looked over the report, then back at the courtroom. "Mr. Mason," he said gravely, "the court is deeply troubled by the mounting evidence. The combination of forensic science and this unusual testimony cannot be ignored." Mason sighed, sensing the tides turning. Emma made another small gesture, this time mimicking stepping back quickly, then a sudden loud noise. Max responded with a low, urgent bark. The prosecutor interpreted. Emma is describing the moment the lift gave way, a sudden, dangerous failure caused by sabotage. The courtroom was wrapped. Judge Halverson finally broke the silence. This court recognizes the uniqueness of this testimony. It challenges traditional courtroom procedure, but offers undeniable insight. Emma's mother wiped away a tear. For the first time in months, hope glimmered in the eyes of the Reynolds family. Outside the courtroom, reporters whispered about the dog testimony that was reshaping the trial and challenging how justice could be served for victims who could not speak. Inside, Emma and Max had become symbols of silent courage and the power of trust. The trial was far from over, but the foundation for justice was stronger than ever. The courtroom atmosphere grew heavier as the trial entered its critical phase. The prosecution had laid a solid foundation, combining Emma's silent testimony, Max's uncanny responses, and the forensic evidence pointing to deliberate sabotage. The defense seemed cornered, scrambling for any way to dismantle the case. Outside the courtroom, whispers of the trial's extraordinary witness had turned into headlines. Child and dog bring justice. Silent testimony shocks judge. And truth told without words. But inside, the focus was on the truth that could finally bring closure to a grieving family. The prosecution called Detective Sarah Mills to the stand. She was a seasoned investigator, known for her meticulous work on difficult cases. Detective Mills laid out the latest breakthrough, a new search of Dave Marks's belongings. During a routine inspection of the defendant's locker at the garage, Mills explained, officers found a wrench that had recently been cleaned, but contained faint traces of hydraulic fluid. Fingerprint analysis revealed partial matches to Mr. Marks. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Dave Marks's face remained unreadable. The detective continued. When confronted with this evidence during interrogation, Mr. Marks initially denied involvement, but later confessed to tampering with the car lift. He admitted to loosening a bolt on the safety mechanism, which caused the fatal accident. The judge's eyes narrowed. Is this confession documented? Yes, Your Honor. It was recorded and signed. The detective confirmed. Emma sat quietly, Max at her side. Though she said nothing, her eyes reflected a glimmer of relief. The defense attorney, Robert Mason, looked stunned. He struggled to find words. Judge Halverson cleared his throat. Given this new evidence and confession, this court finds the defendant's actions criminal. The courtroom broke into murmurs as the gravity of the confession sank in. the prosecutor addressed. The court, Emma's bravery, combined with Max's training and the forensic work, led to the truth. This is justice for Mark Reynolds. Dave Marks was escorted from the courtroom in handcuffs, his face a mixture of regret and resignation. Emma's mother stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered to the judge. And the court, for listening, for believing. Judge Halverson looked at Emma and Max. "This case has been unlike any I've seen in my 30 years on the bench. Your courage has made a profound difference." The judge's words echoed through. The silent courtroom got Max, gently nuzzled Emma's hand. She reached down and stroked his fur, the first smile breaking across her face in years. For Emma, justice was more than a verdict. It was a step toward healing. News cameras outside waited as the family exited the courthouse. Emma's story captured hearts nationwide, inspiring people with its message of resilience and hope. Specialists began studying the potential for service animals to assist trauma victims in legal settings, thanks to Emma and Max's groundbreaking testimony. The judge, once skeptical, now advocated for changes in courtroom procedures to accommodate such extraordinary cases. Emma's silence remained, but through Max, her voice was heard louder than ever. As the sun set over the courthouse, a new chapter was beginning for Emma, her family, and the pursuit of justice in ways no one had imagined. In the days following the courtroom confession, Emma Reynolds and Max became local heroes. The small Ohio town that had been gripped by grief and uncertainty was now flooded with messages of support and admiration. The story of a mute child communicating crucial testimony through her dog had captured hearts far beyond Benton County's borders. At home, Emma's life began to shift in subtle but profound ways. Though she remained largely silent, a new light danced in her eyes. The bond between her and Max, forged through years of training and trust, had grown into something unbreakable. He was not just a companion. He was her voice in a world that had often ignored her. News crews came and went, but Emma's mother shielded her from the overwhelming attention. "She's not ready for all this yet," she told the reporters. "For now, Emma just wants to be a kid again." But Emma's impact was already rippling through the community and beyond. Trauma specialists reached out, intrigued by how animal-assisted communication could open doors for children who struggled to express themselves. The Reynolds case became a beacon of hope for families facing similar challenges. At the courthouse, Judge Halverson found himself reflecting on the trial often. "I've never seen anything like it," he admitted to a colleague. A child who couldn't speak, yet told the truth so clearly with her dog's help. It challenged everything I thought about evidence and testimony. In recognition of Emma's bravery, the judge arranged for a quiet ceremony where she was presented with a certificate honoring her courage. Emma received it with a shy smile. Max, sitting loyally by her side. School administrators also took notice. Emma's teachers adapted her learning environment to better support her communication style. She began attending therapy sessions that incorporated Max, helping her rebuild confidence and social skills. The town organized a fundraiser to support service dog training programs, inspired by Max's pivotal role. Donations poured in from neighboring communities and even national animal welfare groups. Emma, though still reserved, started to participate in local events, not with words, but with the same silent gestures that had spoken volumes in court. Max remained her steadfast partner, responding instantly to her smallest signals. Her story even caught the attention of a documentary filmmaker who sought to capture the remarkable relationship between a girl and her dog that changed the course of justice. Through it all, Emma's family remained grounded. "This isn't about fame," her mother reminded everyone. "It's about giving Emma a voice and letting other kids know they're not alone." As summer approached, Emma and Max spent long afternoons in the park, playing fetch and practicing new signals. It was a different kind of freedom, one built on trust, healing, and hope. Emma's silent courage had not only helped convict criminal, it had sparked a conversation about how we listen to those who cannot speak. And in every heart touched by her story, the message was clear. Sometimes the quietest voices carry the loudest truths. Weeks after the trial ended, life for Emma Reynolds and Max settled into a quieter rhythm. The courthouse was now behind them, but the impact of their story continued to ripple through the community and beyond. What had once been a courtroom spectacle had become a testament to resilience, trust, and unconventional courage. Emma's days were filled with small victories. She still didn't speak much, but she laughed more freely now. Her hands moved with purpose, signaling her thoughts to Max, who never left her side. The two had become inseparable, not just companions, but partners in a silent dialogue that transcended words. Her mother watched with a mixture of relief and pride. Emma has found her voice in ways we never imagined, she said softly. Max has been her bridge back to the world. The school had embraced Emma's unique needs, integrating service animals and alternative communication methods for other students facing similar challenges. Emma even began volunteering with a program that trained therapy dogs. Eager to help other children find the comfort she had discovered, news outlets continued to share their story, inspiring countless families. Emma's case sparked discussions nationwide about how courts handle testimony from trauma victims, especially children with speech difficulties. Judges, lawyers, and therapists explored new policies to allow service animals to assist vulnerable witnesses. Recognizing the power of nonverbal communication, Emma's bravery had opened doors for those who felt voiceless. In Benton County, the local animal shelter reported a surge in adoptions as people were inspired to give dogs like Max a second chance. Max himself was honored with a special award from the county's Humane Society, recognizing his role in helping solve a case that had seemed unsolvable. At home, Emma and Max spent countless afternoons in the backyard, practicing new signals and exploring the world together. Emma's hands moved with confidence now, no longer trembling from fear, but filled with purpose. One afternoon, Emma made the now familiar circular motion that had first caught the judge's attention. Max responded instantly, sitting attentively. Emma smiled a small, genuine smile. Her mother sat nearby, tears in her eyes. "You've come so far, sweetheart." Emma's silence was no longer a barrier. It was her strength. The judge, who had presided over the case, often reflected on how his perspective had changed. "This wasn't just a trial," he said in a speech to a judicial conference. "It was a lesson in listening beyond words, in recognizing the courage behind silence." Emma and Max reminded us that truth comes in many forms. As the sun set on Benton County, Emma and Max looked toward the future, a future filled with hope, healing, and possibilities. Their story wasn't just about justice served. It was about a girl who found her voice, a dog who spoke for her, and a world learning to listen. And for Emma, that was the greatest victory of all.